It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate, oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Dillard.
And my name is Mike Royer.
And this week we're reviewing the She-Hulk series. All 9 episodes, Mike, are now out in the open.
9. Don't be confused because some seasons have 8. Some have had 6. If you're watching House of the Dragon, there's 10 episodes. And Rings of Power had 8. And what else was airing right now?
Great British Baking Show has about, a baker's dozen.
Have 10. Andor has... I caught that, Chris. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Andor's got like
a dozen?
14 or something.
It's like a
I
dozen,
don't know.
yeah. I think it's 12. So
I can't keep track of it.
Yeah.
So long story short, we watched all She-Hulk.
we got it. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. News earlier this week: Marvel delays some of their big releases. Their bigger movies delayed. So we'll talk about what that means, what happened, and what the new dates are. Black Adam is in theaters this week. I keep forgetting about this. No offense to Black Adam, I just keep forgetting about it. It is in theaters this week, so we'll talk about what that means here in a little bit and more.
Yes, and me and Chris, we did something. We moved coincidentally halfway through spooky season and decided to celebrate it with a film franchise. I think we teased last week, known as Hellraiser.
Yes.
Often known as like the Pinhead movie.
Yeah.
And if you have no idea what we're talking about, you've seen the visual of it before. It's just a bald, pale dude with nails in his face.
And guess what? You know just about as much as we do.
So it's just kind of funny when this stuff happens because we just kind of put the vibes out into the world that like, oh yeah, thinking about watching Hellraiser, and then all of a sudden we're texting each other and we're coincidentally watching it at the same time with
both of them, I believe, right?
with no prior planning at all. So the first film, Hellraiser, came out in 1987, and the newest remake, reboot, refresh, whatever word
it's a
you want
requel.
to call it. Requel came out this year, 2022, on Hulu. So there's a million of them in between. Chris, you were letting me know that
there's 11.
There's a few of them that are made just strictly to keep the rights at the studio. So I was kind of scrolling through IMDb, like kind of reading the synopsises and looking at some of the screenshots of some of the films in between. And I'm like, oh man, I'm kind of curious about a couple of them. But I think what I would prefer, and it probably exists out there, is I just want to go on YouTube and just find somebody that's kind of done maybe a video essay on all of them to save myself a lot of time. Because, 11 movies, that's too much.
I think, to me, I don't even care about the movies. Show me the different Hellraisers and what they do. That's what I want to know. I want I guess a rundown of like, here's the different Hellraisers from the first one. Here's or Cenobites. They're Cenobites, not Hellraisers. Here's the Cenobites from the first one, the second one, the third one, and here's what they all mean and do or whatever their abilities. I would love to just kind of go through that. More than anything.
So how about this? I'll recap the first one here just real quick. You recap the second one.
Yes.
And then we'll just go about our merry way and talk about superheroes after that.
We'll get into some good stuff. All right, go for it.
Yeah,
Tell us Hellraiser.
So the first Hellraiser in 1987 feels very rooted in the 80s, which kind of adds a little bit of charm to it. I feel like the advantage of being born in the late 80s is you were, way too young to be able to watch anything slightly mature from the 80s. So now I feel like when I go back and revisit these things, kind of a la the Predator films when I talked about them in previous weeks, it's just kind of a fun nostalgia trip for something you've never seen before. So Hellraiser feels a little similar in a way where you get to see a lot of like practical special effects, lots of makeup, lots of like stop motion, time ramping, similar effects to when the bad guy's face melts in Indiana Jones. You're kind of getting reverse effects of a guy who regenerates from the floorboards in a scene. So I enjoyed all of that, but it does feel very much like a spooky movie that's set into the 80s where things start a little slow. It's very dramatic. Before you jump into that, it feels to me very parallel to the Beetlejuice movie of the 80s, right? These people move into a new house, and none of the creepy stuff happens until later in the movie. I was like, there's like a huge parallel. But I love watching Beetlejuice. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I was like, there's just a huge parallel there with that 80s, like new house, everything's creepy here kind of vibe. Yeah, but when it comes to the humans and characters in the movie, it revolves around a woman who cheated on her husband on her wedding day with his brother. So you flash forward to the future, this brother is now into the occult, as you would say, and he finds this mysterious puzzle box, and when you open the puzzle box, you are basically chosen by these demonoid / angel creatures called the Cenobites.
There's no T. There's only one T. Cenobite.
Cenobite? Well, I feel like I'm close to saying like Cinesticks every time.
Yeah.
So
I'll take I like the Cinesticks. Let's do that one.
Yeah, but the creatures are actually kind of interesting at face value, depending on how much face you see of theirs. But they kind of have this interesting motivation where I feel like usually in a scary movie when you're presented with a demon, right? The demon just wants to kill you. It wants to torture you. It wants to scare you. It wants to dominate you, eat you, whatever, right? But these demons, I find them more interesting because they actually want to traverse the experience of human pain and pleasure, kind of whether you like it or not. So they almost are thinking they're doing you a favor by, ripping things off of you or putting things into you. So you get to kind of get extra fear out of the fact that they feel like you want this in a way. So that kind of adds an extra level to these characters. But this being the first film in the franchise, you don't get a whole lot of Cenobites in this film. They don't show up until about the third act, but I think they look pretty cool, right? Especially trying to put your head back in the 80s, right? When everything was practical effects. Yeah. So you're having literal physical objects kind of like peeling. You get really close camera shots when these hooks supposedly go into flesh, but really they're just probably going into painted latex. But, it still feels very visceral. So there's another standout moment outside of the guy that regenerates through the floorboards of where this kind of woman gets trapped in like this demon next world hallway, and this creature runs at her from down the hallway, and you can tell it's like a dude in like a rubber suit on the top half, and then the bottom half is this kind of like animatronic worm, and it's using its hands around the narrow hallway to like crawl after her. But at the very beginning of the shot, if you have an eagle eye, you can kind of see the bicycle wheel that it's sitting on top of as they kind of use it to probably like push cart it down the hallway after her. So I don't know, I find all that stuff really, really charming. So I say I could recommend the first Hellraiser, if you're kind of into that kind of like practical effects filmmaking, if you kind of want to see the history of scary movies kind of playing out. But I don't think this would be an easy recommendation. I would be like, hey, it's Halloween, why don't you just go throw on Hellraiser? It's kind of intense and it's a little bit of effort to watch it, but I would say overall I got more out of it than I didn't. So and then of course, after you watch the first one, you got to roll on over to the new one.
Yeah,
right?
So the new one shares the same name, released on Hulu. But honestly, it feels like it's in the same universe, right? For this, it's just a modern iteration of the story, because the whole idea is there's a puzzle box, and if you open this puzzle box. In the original Hellraisers, you summon these Cenobites. And in this one, if you open the puzzle box, it will stab you, and any bit of blood makes you the target for the Cenobites no matter where you are. So you can't get away from them. And in this one, you have essentially a recovering addict and her boyfriend who happen upon the box during a heist. They're trying to get some money to get themselves up off the ground, I guess. And, from here, it kind of goes along with this girl. Her name, I believe it's Riley, right? In both of them. The character in both of them, I believe, is Riley. Then her brother ends up getting stabbed by the box. And then the whole point of this is her her brother's boyfriend, her boyfriend, and her brother's roommate all trying to figure out, how to bring him back. Where did he go? He just kind of disappeared, and it leads you into the story of I forget the guy's name, who actually the main villain in this, but he opened the box up 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or something like that. 5, I forget much time had passed. If you open the box in this one through different configurations, I think there's 6 or 7, you get to talk with Leviathan, the god of the Cenobites himself, and they will wish you one of the items. I think it's there's sensation, resurrection, power, life, knowledge and life is the other ones. So if you open the final box, the god will give you one of these things, and honestly, they have a sick, twisted sense of humor about it. So like when you wish for a genie and the genie twisted on you.
It's very much a monkey paw situation.
Yeah. So he wished for sensation. Because he had money. He's like, I can buy anything in the world. I just want to feel. And then they end up with this, it looks like an accordion who pulls on his nerves in his body, which was kind of
it was a freaky idea for sure. And I would applaud them for, I would say, the interesting prop design too, because the object that's embedded in this guy's body, it's not like anything I'd really seen before. It's kind of like that shiny golden brass look, but it doesn't really look like something like you would see the Maniac from Saw make, right? It almost has an elegance to it. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. The prop designer did a pretty good job there.
Yeah, and it's embedded in his body. And then the interesting part about I guess this one and the first one is if you are if you get cut by the box and you become the target of the box, you can pick another victim for the Cenobites to take, right? And we kind of get to see this. This guy has built a mansion. The guy with the who opened the box that prevents the gods and Cenobites from coming into it. And Mike, we hadn't figured this out how yet because there's no special metal. There's no special. Is it the design? Is it the patterns or
it's
what?
Kind of. Yeah, I would say the biggest flaw. I mean, I didn't really like this movie. I'll just cut to the chase. I wasn't a big fan of the Hellraiser reboot. It just felt very dour, unexciting, and the characters carry the proverbial idiot ball whenever it's necessary. They show these Cenobites being incredibly slow, right? And all you have to do is just nick somebody a little bit with this box, right? And you can kill one of the Cenobites coming after you. You don't have to gore them with it, just a little poke. And they're dead. They follow the rules of the box, right? So all she has to do at the very, very end is stab the blind one. Yes, there's a blind Cenobite that is his face is covered with flesh. She had to, she could have just thrown the box at it, and there was a pretty good chance that the blade hanging off of it would have just scratched it, and it would have been done and over with. But no, she's running away from it, and she just runs into a random column and drops it.
It drops it the opposite direction of what anyone would know where it was.
Yes,
it was weird.
And beyond frustrating, one really interesting thing about these demons is they are pros at kind of appearing out of nowhere. The original movie and this one does pretty cool shots where a character will just kind of be in an innocuous space, and all of a sudden a seam will appear in a wall. It'll open up, and it's like a hallway to hell, right? So they have already shown that these characters can appear wherever they want to appear, but not in this mansion. They literally can't walk through a gate, even though they have the ability to make chains appear out of thin air. So it was a little silly and unsurprising when you told me that David Goyer was involved.
David Goyer, yeah. So once I saw we're in for something that's full of, there's magic blood involved at some point in this, right? But it's everyone's blood is magical, and the whole point of this, it just feels I guess not creative, right? You did bring up that this is very brutal. It's about body horror is the way this works. At one point, a lady does get pins through her throat, and then it actually does the camera in her throat as she's screaming. And I agree, that was pretty cool. That's interesting. That's a new take on it. But other than that, everything else was just very bland, right? Like it's like I know where this is going. I know what's gonna happen. There's no surprise here.
I do have to say I did kind of look online and kind of to see maybe how some of like the horror community was responding to this film, and I think ideally this film is just not for us, because I saw some people saying that they really liked this, one of the better kind of horror gore movies that they've seen in a while, and they thought it was, you know, pretty good adaptation of what Hellraiser has been in the past. And so if you are into this might be a good time. But it is a weird franchise that we dipped into this week, Chris.
If you have 5 Hellraiser movies that just sucked and shit the bed, right? Like you probably like, oh my god, finally a good one. If it's just mediocre, so totally understand that. I would also give them props for the design and the character designs in this as well. I think nothing really felt CG, right? Everything felt latexy and like actual like models like on the people. Like there's like the woman who has like her throat like splayed open, right, with like the arc across her head. I'm like, these designs feel pretty good. They feel like
it's so
good.
It's so funny because if you had no idea what we were talking about and just listening us to describe the movie, like you would think, oh my god, this is horrific. This must just be the most brutal thing to put on screen. But when it's in front of the camera, it's just kind of, it's almost innocuous, right? Yeah. You like the most brutal thing, like I think the single most brutal thing in the movie is the very, very last shot. And I guess I won't spoil it for anybody, but you kind of get to see, I would say, the birth of a Cenobite, right? So it is pretty brutal, but also at the same time, it's just like, maybe some of this should have been a little bit earlier in the movie. Maybe not save it for the very final scene, but I don't think this is necessarily my cup of tea, but I feel like I've expanded my horizons at the very least, which is what any Cenobite would want out of you.
Exactly. We're Cinephiles, not Cenobites, Mike. And we got it wrong the whole time. But Hellraiser, it's on Hulu. I believe the first Hellraiser is also on Hulu as well, Mike. Or?
First Hellraiser was Amazon Prime.
Okay, yeah. So in the days of streaming, you're good luck finding where it is, but there it is. Last night, I was able to pop in my copy of Man-Thing from 2005, Mike, from the Sci-Fi Channel finally. Again, I'm like, ooh, we just got Werewolf by Night with Man-Thing. Let's go back and revisit this. Maybe there's some charm in it. And let me tell you what, Mike, there is not a single bit of charm in this goddamn movie.
Oh, no.
It is awful. Listening to interviews, like I went and kind of dove into this. Apparently when they started making this movie in 2004 with New Line Cinema, they did this in the first Punisher with Thomas Jane, but apparently they made this physical man thing for reference on set, and then the studio was like, we're not going to use it, we're going to CGI over it, and then they started cutting budgets, and then finally like, actually we're not going to CGI over it, so anything you've shot will already be this man thing kind of dude. And it's just, it's the characters suck. They're not fun to be around. They're this, unabashedly like stereotypical like swamp people kind of vibes to them, right? To a lot of them. The main guy, his haircut or hairline is freaking me out. I don't know what's up with his hairline, if it's a wig, if he's natural that way, but I could not stop looking at that thing. And he's the new sheriff in town, and it's just not fun. The man thing, he doesn't do any. I actually dipped out 10 minutes before it was over because I was like, I can't finish this. I'm not paying attention. But he didn't do any of the burning thing that he did in the new one, which is like his like typical power. They just cut to people who have like branches and stuff like like trees and swamp sticks coming out of them, and they don't show it. So it's just like, it's not even that good of a horror movie. So I mean, I can't in good faith, even if this is on Tubi, I believe you can even watch it on YouTube. Don't watch this. Do yourself a favor and just skip this, because I had like, I guess a fondness of it, because I'm like, oh, this is old Marvel, right? This is Sci-Fi Channel Marvel. No, I must have been lying to myself, because it is not fun at all. So cannot recommend that one thing. I will go on the other side and say I recommend The Rings of Power, Mike. I know you've not finished it, so I cannot spoil this series for Mike.
Yes, don't spoil it.
Right here.
Please.
But this whole season, the whole show has been fantastic to watch. Lots of surprises, lots of things. You kind of get the conversation going. My wife and I were talking, throughout it. You know this, Mike. The big question is, who is Sauron in the show, right? Who is he? Why is he here? it's so much fun to watch this. I love the sets. Like I talk about how real this is, how it feels like the original Lord of the Rings more than the Hobbit movies. It keeps feeling like that through and through. I'm very excited. The actors, they're all really good at what they're doing in this. I did notice early on, Mike. I know where you are. There is. Have you come across the guy they call Adar, the father? Dude.
What do they? What's this person do? Give me their role in the show.
He leads the orcs.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I was like, that guy looks familiar. Is he the uncle from Game of Thrones? He is. He's the Uncle Benjen from Game of Thrones, who plays like a very pale, inhuman looking dude in that one as well. So like, I was like,
he's been typecast.
He's crossing over here. Either way, regardless, this show is just phenomenal. I'm not much into the, again, we talked about this. We're not Lord of the Rings like hardcore. We're not reading the Silmarillions. We're not doing any of these extra stuff. But like, I really had a good time with the show, and I can't recommend enough if you're into the fantasy epic without. There's also House of the Dragon that's also fantasy, but that's more like political fantasy, and this is non-political fantasy. This is like adventuring in Dungeons and Dragons kind of stuff. So if you've not had a chance to watch yet, the entire season is out on Amazon Prime right now, so you can get through there and just binge through it real quick. Some of these are like 70-minute episodes, so really fulfilling on the link there. So I'd have to sit there and recommend that.
Yeah, for just like dollar to budget to reasons, like you would be missing out. It almost feels like you're taking money from Jeff Bezos by watching this show. This is so expensive.
yeah, and like it, and I like it I don't know. It just feels like Lord of the Rings, and like the people who make this probably are the people who grew up watching it, right? Like our age or so. So like, I know that there's probably a lot of love and care has gone in this to not make it feel cheap, and it really comes through. So, kudos to Amazon Prime for doing that. We also applaud them for The Boys, right? I know The Boys, they're filming season 4 right now. That show never feels cheap either. So, good for them. So, anyway, we watched some stuff. I'm hoping to catch some more spooky stuff this week, Mike. Should we dive into something else before we? Like, what should we watch? Do you think anything that we should put out into the ether so we accidentally watched it at the same time again? Or
oh man, Hellraiser holds a sliver of my mind because I feel like I grew up seeing the VHS box art all over the place. Like the Pinhead guy was on every cover.
Oh yeah.
There was another one. I don't know if maybe it was Silence of the Lambs. Is that the one that has like the woman that has like a moth like in her mouth on the cover?
Yep.
Okay, maybe that was it. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs, that's a good one. Like I said, now that I said Beetlejuice, I want to watch Beetlejuice again before the end of the month. Halloween Ends just came out, to everyone shitting all over that. So if you're into the new Halloween franchise with Jamie Lee Curtis, you can check that out. I believe that's on. Is that Hulu as well? No, Peacock. It's free somewhere.
I think NBC Universal holds the rights to a lot of those classic horror icons.
Yeah. So you can go check those out. So yeah, just it's the season for spooky stuff. If you're watching anything cool, let us know. We want to know about it. But let's jump into the news, Mike. Let's get into this. This week on Thursday, you can buy your tickets for Black Adam. This movie has been in the works since 2007 when The Rock first announced he was going to make it, and it's actually here. They're going to put it in theaters finally, so if you've not got your tickets, you can get your tickets. I don't know if people are going to run to see this, but it will be out, so you can go check that in theaters this week. I will tell you, I woke up, was it Wednesday or Thursday? Maybe even Friday. The post-credit scene, someone filmed this in an early release theater or somewhere, and they put it online. So literally, I've seen the end-credit scene, Mike, already for this. So
bummer.
Yeah, I would say so. But I'm excited to watch it. So that does confirm there is a post-credit scene in Black Adam. We don't get a lot of those in DC movies, but I just want to go ahead, do my due diligence and let people know, hey, you can definitely check out the post-credit scene for this. So I'm excited to see this, and like we said, Dr. Fate, right? I think he's going to be somebody I really want to see in action with Pierce Brosnan in this. All right, well then we'll just jump into the next news. The Ahsoka show, which I believe might be our after Mandalorian, maybe our next show for Star Wars, right? I believe this is one probably filming the most into filming right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I know they're filming Skeleton Crew, but I don't know how far that is. But there are rumors that a Zabrak Stormtrooper will appear. Zabraks are Darth Maul's race, if you aren't familiar with the Clone Wars shows. So the people who have like the intricate like, so there's some are green and black, the red and black. They have the horn structure on their thing, kind of look like devils. So Zabrak Storm, I would love to see a Zabrak Stormtrooper.
So do they put holes in the Stormtrooper helmets for the horns to poke through, or do they mold the helmets around the horns?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's the only. I mean, I think it could look cool either way.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing, I haven't really had a chance to bring this up, so I'll do it here since we're talking about Star Wars, because I'm still slowly working my way through Andor, and I'm having a great time. But on the note of Stormtroopers, I think the single best thing like Andor has done so far is they removed like Stormtroopers from the equation, right? Because at the root, nobody is scared of Stormtroopers. They have not intimidated anybody for decades, and they only ever get made fun of for having just horrible shots, right?
Yeah.
So in Andor, they have essentially the same type of thugs, but they just put them in more kind of like, I guess, space cop uniforms, whereas like Stormtroopers are more like space infantry. So these like space cops, if you will, you can see their face, you can see them emote. It just feels more personal. It feels like they can hate more on the heroes, and they're also they're more believable as something conflicting.
Yeah.
So so far I'm having a great job in Andor. So maybe that's the answer, right?
Yeah.
Lean away from the Stormtroopers, or if you're gonna have a Stormtrooper, make them scary again by giving them horns and making them Darth Maul.
Exactly.
On the inside.
Well, and Zabrak are naturally, a lot of them are force sensitive naturally as well. So maybe they've been chosen because they have some force-like abilities to fight Ahsoka, right? Like, you don't just put someone in with a blaster and some thing to fight a Jedi with two lightsabers. Like, I feel like you'd get killed pretty quickly. So I think this would be a fantastic addition. Also, Ahsoka set after Return of the Jedi. So do you think that these are Stormtroopers, or are they maybe their First Order like troopers instead? Like maybe some early First Order, I guess, hires. I say hires, like, I don't know how, like joiners. I don't know. So
yeah, who even knows? You know, the timeline just makes my brain melt.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, Ahsoka's adult, so we know it's in Say Mandalorian, because we'll just say Mandalorian timeline because she was in the Mandalorian. Captain Rex will also make an appearance from the show. He's a fan favorite character Dave Filoni created for the Clone Wars, right? He worked with the Ahsoka and I guess Anakin and Obi-Wan early on. Very, very prominent clone trooper. So glad he will be showing back up. And then lastly, I just put this in here because we keep hearing this and we just don't have confirmation that Lars Mikkelsen, who voiced General Thrawn in the Rebels show, will be doing the live action version of his character as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I guess I there's so much unknown about Star Wars right now. Like, really, they need to give us something, because I'm dying to watch more Star Wars. Again, nothing against Andor. I think Andor is fantastic, but you know, there's some really cool stuff coming, and I think they need to tease us a little bit more with it. So, we'll guys keep you posted as Star Wars comes out. I guess the next one would be, I guess we would know Mandalorian, right, in February. So we'll keep you guys posted if anything pops up in the interim. We're gonna wrap up the rest of the show with this Marvel stuff here, and it's not a quick episode by any means, but we do have a lot of Marvel stuff to wrap up. And first and foremost, we're gonna jump into Nova, the character Nova, who is part of the Nova Corps, which is, I'm like, why is his name Nova if he's part of the Nova Corps? It's whatever. But this project was, we know that they're in the works. It was supposed to be a series, but it's rumored to transform into a special presentation style format due to the success of The Werewolf by Night. The reception of that has been positive. We talked about how much we like that. I think a 50-minute episode, or like one-off story that's very focused, tells a great story, possibly has a nice budget, could do wonders instead of dragging things out for 6 episodes every time we want to introduce a new character.
Yeah, it does make you wonder strategically, right, from a streaming service, because one thing I never really understood where it makes sense for a platform like YouTube, right, to want to increase watch time, right? Because if you increase watch time, you see more ads. But I feel like even before a lot of these streaming services introduced these like ad-supported tiers, right, they're always trying to get you watch more, right? They had all these autoplays on. They wanted you to watch more episodes. They wanted you to crank through minutes. And to me, I never really understood that, right? Because to me, that's not the strategy. The strategy is just make sure they don't cancel and they stay subscribed. And I don't think that always equates to numbers of minutes that they watch. I think it's just make sure there's always something compelling every month. Yeah. So they don't, cancel, because really, if you think about it, a subscription service is, anywhere from like $10 to $20 a month. If you just give me one really good show, I'll pay $20 to watch that show. I mean, because that's cheaper than it would be to buy it, right? So basically, if you kind of extrapolate that same strategy, you don't need to make like a full season for Nova. You don't even need to make a full like 2-hour movie for Nova to keep me subscribed to Disney Plus. Just give me something really awesome every month, and this is a title that could land in any particular month of Disney Plus. And like it does make you, I feel like we distilled Werewolf by Night really, really well in those like 55 minutes, right? Yeah. It really kept my attention. There was never really any like lagging story points. It just kept moving, and I commend them for that. And I think it's a great way to bring characters into the universe. So who knows because if there was going to be like a standalone Nova movie, there's no way it would have just been Nova. They would have had to throw like a Guardian of the Galaxy in there, right? They would have had to throw something in there to sweeten the pot. But if you're doing it on Disney Plus with just a special presentation, you could get away with it just being Nova.
And what's cool about this is, everything you said is true. They introduced Nova in one of these, and then he shows up in another movie later, right? Like you introduce the character. Nova's great because the Nova Corps, we already know about the Nova Corps from Guardians 1, right? So it's not new. Most of their Guardians rides are based on the Nova Corps, the prison breakout and the rewind stuff. So the Nova Corps is pretty set in stone, right, in the MCU. Yeah. So introducing this character and how he relates to it, how they adapt him, fantastic. So if you give him an introduction in this and then bring him into a movie later, you don't have to spend a lot of time in that movie introducing him because he's already there.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I know they undid the blip with the Infinity Stones, which theoretically would have brought like Xandar back. But I mean, we could assume, right, that the Nova Corps is kind of in disarray.
So,
right.
Two things. One, the Nova Corps would not have been undone by the blip because they were destroyed when Thanos went to get the Reality Stone.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Because the Asgardians didn't come back that he killed getting the Space Stone. But that's fine. The Nova Corps, because they are a police force, I assume that actually we might see them in Captain Marvel more, because I believe she was with them policing the universe in between the blip era. Like, there are still some remnants of them left out there. They weren't completely wiped out, but they may be in disarray. Nova, one of the most popular storylines for him in the comic books is actually all of the Nova Corps was wiped out except one helmet, which contained all of the knowledge from the World Mind, which is how the Nova Corps get their power. And Richard Rider from Earth got that one helmet, so he was at the lone Nova Corps for a while with that, trying to rebuild it over time. So there's that possible. That's a great story. They probably won't adapt it into this because I don't see them taking that on. But if you wanted to introduce a Nova during the blip, right? I think that's a good idea. You mentioned they are in disarray there, so that's a good way to do it. And then how do they rebuild it? But I think we're both in agreement here. Like, you don't need a 6-episode series or 9 or 8 or 12, whatever, to keep you coming back, because there's always the possibility someone just waits until the show's done and buys a month and binges it, right? But if you have new, fresh content, keeps people talking, keeps people in your ecosystem. Because I can see right now at the end of Nova, hey, you watch Nova, do you want to watch Guardians of the Galaxy? Right? Oh, hell yeah, I want to watch Guardians. Let's put that on another day. It's a fantastic model to keep bringing people into your streaming service, or keep them there. And this is on the heels that there might be less full series from some of these rumored upcoming series and more one-offs. I think that's a cost-saving measure, right, across that, because I think a series is longer. 6 episodes costs a lot more, but also probably is a way to keep stories from, I wouldn't say dragging out, but having like filler episodes or problematic stories, because like you mentioned, the werewolf by night, it just goes right, boom, 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 right off the bat. It doesn't slow down until it's done, and then you're like, okay, that was pretty good. So I think this is a good model, right? Mm-hmm. All right, moving on. Thunderbolts, new reports, continuing reports. More outlets are looking to confirm Harrison Ford will be the new General Thunderbolt Ross in the upcoming MCU films. New World Order first, and then followed by Thunderbolts. So I think this is fine. I don't think William Hurt, he is a great actor, but I don't think people will be upset that he's been recast, right? Thunderbolt Ross?
Yeah, I mean, the last time we brought this up, it's like, this is the best way to go when unfortunately you lose like a seasoned actor that has been in your universe for a while. They're almost become impossible to replace because we're so used to them, right? Mm-hmm. So the best thing to do is you almost honor them by saying like, oh, we could only replace you by finding somebody that's incredibly famous, right? Yeah. The only person that could fill your shoes is like a superstar like Harrison Ford. It's like a compliment in a way. So, yeah, I think we're all okay with that. Yeah,
100%. This was also, apparently has been in the works for a while, but not announced at D23, so it did not steal from his Indiana Jones presentation. Mm-hmm. So that tracks with how, important that presentation was, right, to do that. So I think this is great news. I hope it's true. Will he be the Red Hulk? Probably, maybe, but I could also totally see that being a red herring, pun intended, if you will, for him. I just don't see Harrison Ford being a CGI actor, right? Like, he seems too curmudgeon-y to want to do that. So, yeah. So we'll keep you guys posted if that comes out to be true. I was going to say, this is tied to next. We're going to talk about Spider-Man 4, Mike 4. But No Way Home, the more fun edition, is starting to hit streaming services and online places. So if you didn't go to the theaters to watch it, you can now find it at some streaming services. I believe it hit some other countries first, but if you're a non-paying subscriber to ChrisFlix, you can catch that out now. Anyway, Spider-Man 4, there's been some rumblings that the rumored release date for this is going to be July 12th, 2024, Mike. The continuation of No Way Home.
I mean, I feel like that's sooner than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, they'd have to start this pretty soon, right? Like to crank out a Spider-Man movie in a year and a half.
I mean, I guess because No Way Home was delayed, right? So I guess if you kind of maybe line it up to the original release date, it makes a little bit more sense. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we all know Sony; they got to keep that Spider-Man machine rolling, no matter what.
Yeah, and that's why this movie, this date right here, is 2 weeks before Thunderbolts. So, I think simply because it's a Sony movie and not a Marvel movie, but this they're producing it in association or collaboration with Marvel, whatever they want to call it. I think one of these two, if either July 12th isn't going to work for Spider-Man or Thunderbolts is going to get delayed. One of the two. I just don't see them doing two movies 2 weeks back to back, especially because Spider-Man, that's a moneymaker, right? Like you don't want to hurt your either Thunderbolts by people still going to see Spider-Man or vice versa, right? So.
I think Sony should just start copying Marvel's homework, and they should just do their own special presentations for these these weird stories that they want to tell, and they just sell it directly to Netflix. Yeah. Like, call it something else. Call it like I don't know, something punny with the Spider-Man name, like a special web presentation.
Yes.
And give us the sequel to Morbius that way. I would watch 55 more minutes of a new Morbius story if I could just play it on Netflix.
Let's take this pun to the next level, Mike. Let's just make them webisodes.
Webisodes. Oh, I love it.
I think you were so close. I was like, oh, is he going to say it? He didn't say it. Just put them on webisodes, put them on Sony saying, I'll sign up. Whatever. You can have my email, my browser history. I don't care. I'll watch your movie. But yeah, so the rumor is also that this Spider-Man 4 will be more street level story, right? Which is what we kind of saw at the end of No Way Home, and possibly deal with the aftermath of the Daredevil Born Again series, which should be out by this time or wrapping up. So the rumor for Born Again, and this is a rumor since the Daredevil show was on Netflix, that there will be a Mayor Fisk arc, right, where he's the mayor of New York, and if Spider-Man's there, of course there's going to be some sort of aftermath clashing. But I mean, I would love to see more Charlie Cox with Daredevil. He was already in the last movie, right? Charlie Cox is fantastic in everything he's done. She-Hulk, duh. So let's get that guy more stuff. Moving on, let's talk about some delays. We got 4 Marvel movies that were just kind of, I feel like they were just announced, but like, you know, that was July, right? We're in October. And these have all been delayed quite a bit. So let's talk about, first and foremost, we were going to get Blade, but Blade has suffered a setback by losing the director due to scheduling conflicts. So that has been pushed back from September 6th of 2024, Mike, when it was originally November of 2023. So almost a full year.
Yeah, that's rough. And I mean, I feel like a lot is being held up too with Blade as well, because Blade is going to usher in more of this kind of monster verse side of things. So it feels like there's a lot of like branching projects that just can't quite get going without Blade.
Yes, and with this, due to the director leaving, the delay, they're going to be reworking the script. I assume this was probably due to a release schedule thing, right, where they had to redo almost all of the Phase 4 stuff because of the delays, right, and rescheduling. So they're going to be reworking the script a little bit. I'm not too worried about it, but I feel September's a pretty good month if they want to. November's weird because I don't think that's too late for Halloween and spooky season, but September's pretty good. I feel like this is actually win in the month. I
think that would be our first MCU movie to drop in September, right?
That I know of, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, you know, we always talk about how these big studios can reinvent a month with just one movie.
Guardians was an August release. August is usually a little slower, so... Yeah,
that end of the month. Yeah, September's strange. Yeah. Who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if things shift again, though. Everything's shifted. Ever since COVID kind of let the studios know, like, oh, things won't crumble to the ground if we move a movie after we set it. Yeah. I feel like they're just more used to doing it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, I think delays are fine. Like, right, you know, quality over quantity, totally fine in this situation. Because you mentioned, you know, people can just move movies. Deadpool 3 was just announced, like, what, last week? Maybe not even a week ago, with a date of September 6th. Of 2024. Well, guess what? Blade took that movie, so now Deadpool is going to the November 8th slot of 2024.
I mean, that's probably better for Deadpool, right? You know that's a movie that's going to bring in dollars, right? Yeah. And November's a good month for that. November, December, good time slots. I feel like there's always a James Bond movie that comes out in November. I feel like that's and Harry Potter. I think sometimes it came out in December too for that one, but yeah. November, I think it's had Doctor Strange's too and some other titles. Yeah, solid month for Deadpool.
Yeah, and actually you made me think here. Shang-Chi was September of last year. Shang-Chi was a September release.
Oh, that one, I feel like that's an outlier though, right? They were just trying to get anything into a theater at that point in time. Any month where it was safe enough, they were like, let it go.
100%.
But I guess it showed them that, September can be a month.
Yeah, I agree. It was the first only in theaters movie back. So yeah, they really, it looks like they feel confident about that. So Deadpool 3 only pushed back 2 months, but for a movie that was announced literally a week ago, that's, bold move. But that November 8th slot was originally the Fantastic Four slot. So Fantastic Four has been pushed back to Valentine's Day, February 14th of 2025. I think that's fine, right? This was Fantastic Four's always been Marvel's first family. Why not put it on Valentine's Day? Ironically, Deadpool, and I believe maybe Deadpool 2, or at least Deadpool 1 was on Valentine's Day when it first dropped.
Yeah, so that's true.
I'm really surprised they didn't flip-flop these, but they must rely on each other being in this order, right? Like, I feel like the reliance is starting to show. Like, we have to have Blade before we have Deadpool. We have to have Deadpool before we have Fantastic Four. And then
everyone's still scared of January, it looks like.
yeah, exactly. And then the last thing here is a big move. This is probably the biggest move we've seen, but probably the smartest, I would say. Avengers Secret Wars has moved from November 7th, 2025, all the way out to May 1st of 2026, which adds 6 months to Phase 6 for Marvel, but that keeps your Avengers movies 1 year apart, just like Infinity War and Endgame.
I mean, so much for seeing an Avengers movie in the end of the year, right? They've pretty much been held to like late spring, early summer for think all of them, if I remember
yep.
correctly.
May has been all of them, yeah.
I guess they're keeping the slot going now.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think everyone was like, oh, they pushed it back 6 months. I don't think that's a quality issue this far out, right? We are still 4 months or 4 years from this, and honestly, I think as much as it sucked as a fan waiting from Infinity War to Endgame, I think it made Endgame that much sweeter when we got to it a year later. At least we know the title of it, right? They're not withholding the title of the Avengers movie until the Super Bowl, right beforehand. So, I think this is fine. It gives them some time to put some more stuff in here, work on some stuff, and probably get things worked out for Secret Wars, Mike. So, overall, delays but not dismays, if you will. But yeah, if you want any of these release dates, by the way, when they come out, you can head over to superheroslate.com and click upcoming movies and TV releases and check all this out, because I do update that the second one of these changes. You can just scroll through, look for it in red. As Mike says, what do you say, Mike? There's no ads. We just built this for ourselves. It's our own little tool that we...
No pop-ups, no dumb banner ads, no subscribe to our newsletter here. This is a tool that we use that we just wanted to give to our listeners. So if you're ever confused when the next big movie is supposed to be dropping that we're going to be chatting about, just head on over to our upcoming releases page. It's also a cool little archive, too, of seeing when past things came out as well. So if you want to double check on us and make sure we're telling the facts, when all those other Avengers movies came out, we have all of that on that page, too. Yeah. So, yeah, go check it out.
That's true. And I'm actually going to correct Mike. We didn't build it for you. We built it for us. You just get to use it.
Yes.
Because we're nice like that. All right, so let's wrap this show up by going into She-Hulk, Mike. I know, it's not the full normal episode, but we have a whole season to talk about here of She-Hulk. 9 full episodes for this show. It is dropped. So if you've not seen it, go away, finish it, come back. I would say it's bingeable. In hindsight, it's bingeable because they're like 25 to 30-minute episodes.
Oh yeah,
like
you could crank through this really, really quickly. I was chatting with a friend last night who doesn't really delve too much into the MCU, but I was like, oh, they do some fun fourth wall breaking stuff in the season finale. So if you were just curious, just throw on that last episode. You can kind of see some of the fun that they do with those wall breaks. But obviously, we're going to be talking about spoilers here for She-Hulk. So warnings flashing, that big red light siren emoji. Imagine that's just like been pasted onto the front of your eyeballs right now.
That's right. Yeah, or your ears, because technically you're probably listening to us.
Yeah, wherever it goes.
Yeah.
But I would say overall, She-Hulk for me felt like a solid B show, which is much better from some of the other things that I've seen on Disney Plus, either in Star Wars or Marvel Land. I felt like the jokes kept the show going for me. The humor, I love Tatiana Maslany from when I was watching her in Orphan Black, so I was glad to see her around again. They run into a little bit of an issue, which I find kind of funny because it's similar to when Andrew Garfield was Spider-Man. These are like two characters that both stories are trying to desperately paint as like, oh, nobody wants to be with these two good-looking actors. So that was a little bit of a stretch, but overall, I had a good time. They summed up the story pretty well in the very last episode when herself is saying to the audience, this show is about me coping with what it is becoming a She-Hulk. And I think they earnestly tried to do that, but I feel like they did lose the thread maybe a few times of what was important throughout the season, which made it felt a little disconnected, but I felt rewarded at the end. I thought the set piece was original, creative. It wasn't where I thought it was going to go, and I had a fun time overall. Now I have a new favorite character in the MCU, and it's a robot, and I can't wait till they turn it into a sideshow collectible, and I can put it on my desk because it's just so funny.
I want his hat. I want the robot's hat. I need that to my collection.
Chris, overall, how did you feel about the season?
I'd say I'm probably just a little higher than you. I think for me, knowing that they went into this show saying, we are a sitcom, right? A situational comedy show. I think it delivered throughout the whole thing. And honestly, I feel like it also kind of picked up in the back half a little bit more. The first episode's fantastic, but I think and also, obviously Wongers and that whole magic episode is great, but I think it really picked up the last two because not only do we want to see Charlie Cox's Daredevil, like I mentioned before, like, you know, pouring over him, I think the humor, the comedy, you know, fed that through. And the last episode is something that they'll never be able to do again. This is a finale they will only be able to get away with once, and they will never be able to do it again. By really kind of twisting the genre, I was like, oh my god! Like, I'm poring over the footage, I'm watching all the trailers. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? I've seen, you know, the Abomination in the suit. We've seen, you know, I saw a clip early on this week where Hulk was punching the Abomination. I'm like, what the hell? How are they gonna get all this done in 30 minutes? And lo and behold, they pulled the rug out from under us and sent us through the real world. Through the Disney Plus app interface, which I thought was really funny. That was, you know, that's a real like, did it break? Did the episode end, the kind of thing? They really nailed that, and then kind of gone through the Marvel offices, which I've seen video of before, and I'm like, oh, this is exactly Marvel's offices, through and through, to get to Kevin, which is another, you know, kind of meta, you know. This is a self-referential thing. They also acknowledge, you know, hey, it's cheaper for you to transform when you're off screen, kind of thing. Thought that was really funny. The wink and nod about the X-Men question was hilarious. And then, you know, I think my I wouldn't say complaint. I'm like, it all wraps up kind of at a nice little bow in the end. But she created that ending for herself, so I'm like, yeah, that's fine. She admitted that's what she was gonna do, and that's how it ended. Exactly how she told us it was gonna end. Overall, I think, you know, to me, it's been a funny show. It's had a lot of good references. I think this show really, its strength, Mike, is the actors, right? The characters they've created in the show. I don't think there was a bad character in here, right? As like a main character, like a friend of Jen's, like her lawyer friends were fantastic. Like again, Wong, Daredevil, anybody else. It was just a fantastic show full of characters who I really felt brought it to life. And I think without that, it may not have been as good or, you know, as fun as it was. So
yeah. I just wish there maybe would have been a stronger through line to connect it all. I know that they say that they were making a sitcom, right? But it almost feels like they didn't know exactly how much of a sitcom they wanted to be, right? You know, if you're watching something like New Girl, right? It's very episodic. You can pick up in almost any episode. Yeah, there's some connecting through lines of just like, oh, this season the character lost their job, so now they're bouncing around from different jobs, right? Or what the romances are carrying through, right? But this just felt like almost a standard show that was just missing a really strong arc going through it. I know every once in a while they would try to either do like a little after credit scene or a little stinger at the end going like, oh no, there's somebody in the background working mysteriously, but it felt a little lacking. So once we finally got to the finale and like these bad guys, you know, were, you know, out in front in real life, it just didn't feel very special to me that, oh, they finally cracked the case, right? It all kind of felt very obvious and they didn't really lean into it all that much. But I think that just shows you the strength of the humor overall, which just brought a lot of it up for me. It kept it entertaining and it kept me coming back to it.
I think the She-Hulk's ability, which she's had in the comics, especially the John Byrne run, which is actually pretty close to this overall. It's like she literally has the fourth wall breaking, and that adds so much to this, right? I think if she couldn't do that and make fun of some of this stuff, it wouldn't be as good. Like the self-referential stuff, quote unquote meta acknowledgments, make it that much funnier, I think, at the end of it, at the day. So I really applaud them for leaning into that, and I look forward to her actually interacting with Deadpool down the road and seeing how they do that. That kind of comedy back and forth.
Yeah, I would say do yourself a favor if, you know, it'd be weird if you're listening to this and you haven't really watched it or you're on the fence about it. It'd be a strange selective audience. But if you have like a friend out there that's on the fence, right, and they're like, I don't know, I've been seeing a lot of stuff online. It's all hyperbole, right? I was curious since the show finally wrapped. You know, I went on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes to kind of see some of the audience scores, and it's just some of the responses of people on Twitter saying it's like a 0 out of 10 show or like 1 out of 10. Like there's acts they can't look at this show through an objective lens if you're giving a rating like that. Those are the same people that are probably giving like Falcon and the Winter Soldier like 8 out of 10. I mean, come on, you got to be objective about this.
I would say I'd
they
actually say
don't
those
have that
people
ability.
are probably not happy with Falcon and Winter Soldier either. I think the audience, that the vocal minorities for this show literally probably haven't watched it or watched the first one and was upset that how everything is. The show reference, like the show's villains are essentially those people at the end of the day. But like there's no, like, I agree with you. My concern has always been with the show, where is the villain? What is this thing here? And while some sitcoms, I would say I'd lean into The Office a little bit because that's kind of fourth wall breaking. There were some through lines, they had some heavy-handed stories. I just wish they would have probably opened it up a little sooner rather than kind of push it to the back 2 episodes, right? But I was pleasantly surprised, that Abomination wasn't they made him look like he was the villain, but he just was a paid motivational speaker at the wrong place at the wrong time. I was like, oh, that's good that they actually didn't turn him into like running the villainous things, because I was like, hopefully he did actually learn from his time, like his whatever he called it, his wellness retreat place. I was glad to see that was a true character development rather than just, hey, I'm just pretending to be nice so I can steal your blood later kind of thing.
Yeah.
Overall,
it was a good time. Like Chris said, very much vocal minorities out there talking about this show. I just wish people could create space out there where we could objectively talk about things without being so hyperbolic, right? Obviously, we've talked about things on this show that we've hated before, but it's for real storytelling reasons, not just because we have an axe to grind.
And honestly, if you don't like it, totally fine. I mean, that's your, as the viewer, it's your prerogative to do it. But I mean, I think this show does a really good job telling the story and Jennifer becoming a character through this, right, throughout the whole thing. So it was fun to watch that and see your characters. I think the other thing that they kind of swept under the rug, I wouldn't say swept under, they just kind of left as like a little, hey, here's like 2 seconds, is that again, Hulk has a son named Scar and he showed up, and like literally there's no, like, we're just gonna leave this for some other show or movie's problem. So I thought that was fun payoff that I was like, oh, like you said, like, yeah, you called it. I'm like, yeah, but it didn't feel very earned at the end of the day. I was like, oh, he's just there for a second, and he's like awkwardly silent in the background.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, is Hulk's son, when we see, Bruce Banner again, is it going to be in a movie? Is it going to be in a series? And is it going to be about him going back to Sakaar and collecting his son? Is that going to be the whole movie? Or is that going to be the first act, and then we'll moving forward past that? So yeah, it does make you wonder what is happening there. So
here's the question for you and for me: is this show going to get a season 2? You think? And if not, where do we put these Hulks? We now have 3 Hulks. We started the show with 1 Hulk. We now have 3 Hulks at the end of this show. Where do we see them next, do you think? Is this a Phase 6 movie that they've not announced yet because of the Universal rights, or what?
Yeah, I guess strategically, right, what do? I feel like the best thing to do is you go bigger and badder and more spectacle, and that's to do just like a big old Hulk movie with a lot of hulkening happening in it, smash tons of stuff on screen for 2 hours, and just, there you go, collect your paycheck, right?
Yep.
But also, if you just look at face value, I think this show is good enough to get a second season, and I think you could explore a lot of things. So I guess then you have to be strategic of like, season 2 of She-Hulk before this Hulk movie, supposed Hulk movie, is it after? But yeah, I think I would love them to lean more into like the superhero based crimes, because I always thought those things were really funny. And I think one thing that could help them is like other lawyer type crime detective-y shows that I've watched. There is usually one big case that transpires over the entire season, and I think that's something that could help them format wise in the second season. Drum up like a really big case that takes a lot of work, a lot of boots to the ground, knocking on doors, a lot of investigation and research. Have that be your arc throughout the season, right? And then do like fun, other cases, because not, these. And I imagine she goes independent, right? I think they kind of leaned into that she was going to be starting her own like law practice, right? So
yeah. Well, if not, I mean, she's definitely got the inspiration from Matt Murdock to do so on his own. Maybe she does pro bono work for people who have been affected by superheroes or superheroes who have been persecuted. I think like I said, an arc there. I think there's more to it. Again, She-Hulk, Werewolf by Night, the last two projects from Marvel have really leaned into the idea of telling a different genre of story, right? This being, again, like I said, the sitcom or whatever you want to call it, fourth wall breaking, however, just a comedy in general, and Werewolf by Night being the horror stuff. I think removing them from that, you mentioned the Hulk movie, the spectacle, the debris breaking, like the Thor movie, has been refreshing, to say the least. So I really hope that if they do give her another one, that maybe they can pick the actual courtroom, not drama, but courtroom style stuff to include that more, because I think it was fantastic when she was with going up against Matt Murdock in the courtroom. It was very fun to see that kind of banter back and forth, and hopefully they can find someone for that. The last thing I want to say is I love the intro to this being almost a shot-for-shot remake of the 70s Incredible Hulk.
Oh, I forgot about that.
But what I hate about it is it feels like that's a great idea someone had but didn't know where the hell to put it because it had nothing to do with this episode. I was like, maybe that should have been the end of the episode, right? Like the end credits are like, this is Jennifer's life now post everything she's going to deal with. But like, I loved it. It's great. But at the same time, felt like really weird. Just put it in the middle of nowhere at the same time. Now, was that Lou Ferrigno playing the She-Hulk in that?
I don't know. It definitely was not Tatiana Maslany. So it feels like, maybe there is some sort of reference happening with who's under that green skin. Yeah,
because I was like, who is this person who's very muscular? And it looked like it was Lou Ferrigno, but it could definitely be a woman, someone else playing it. I thought that was really fun. But at the end of the day, this is all on Disney Plus. If you have Disney Plus, which you should go watch this. Oh, I almost forgot, Mike. I got my email to renew my Disney Plus for next year, and it's at a discounted rate if you're part of the 3-year plan. So don't miss that discounted rate and get your Disney Plus if you did the 3-year plan 3 years ago, because that's a hell of a price. So anyway, that's the episode for this week, Mike. If people know what you're up to, what you're doing, where can they find you at, my man?
Oh, they can find me at Mike Royer Design on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And you could read my web comics at pickledcomics.com. Chris, if people want to catch up with you, where are you?
I am right here on the show. No, I'm kidding. You can find me on Twitter, Valdan, Valdan, or Instagram, Valdan87. Or you can have a Rad Retro Bros. I just put together some buttons on a 2-player thing today. It's pretty fun. I'm going to post some pictures of that later. If people want to know more about our show, where they can get us, come listen to our Black Adam review next weekend, obviously, where they can get all those good episodes at.
Oh, all you got to do is visit superheroslate.com. That is the headquarters. That is where our little robot Kevin lives, at superheroslate.com. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you love to listen to find podcasts. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and get merch at superheroslate.com/store. We'll love hearing from you. Reach out. Let us know, what did you think of She-Hulk? Are you enjoying Andor, House of the Dragon, Rings of Power, all the other 1,000 things out there? Let us know what you're watching, what you're digging. And if you want to be a super fan of this show, all you got to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we will be here every week, folks.
That's right. We'll catch you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.